You expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
What's up, cinephiles? Welcome back if you've been here before. My name's Thomas, and this is Thomas Goes to the Movies. Happy holidays to all the skeevy stoners out in the world, is what I would say if this video actually got out on time. That's right, in honor of the recent holiday, I wanted to sit here and celebrate the holiest of all crops by talking about one of my absolute favorite duos in stoner culture, Jay and Silent Bob. Created by independent filmmaker and Red Bank, New Jersey native Kevin Smith in 1994, these guys dominated stoner culture of the 90s and early 2000s. Jay being a loudmouth bad boy and Bob being the silent teddy bear with the heart of gold, these characters would find themselves all over New Jersey in one way, shape, or form to either interact with the protagonists of the films they appeared in, or in some instances were the protagonists themselves. Watching these characters get into misadventures throughout this world Kevin created, now known as the ViewAskewiverse, is always a treat, and I would consider them recommended watching for any 420 friendly individual. That being said, welcome to my first ever 420 special. Or rather, belated 420 special. Here's my ranking of Kevin Smith's ViewAskewiverse films. Starting with number 8, we have Mallrats. Frankly, I don't hate any of these films. I mean, I can't think of one that I would consider or anything like that. However, something had to be at the bottom, and in this case, it's Kevin's second film. This film gives you a look at the mall lifestyle that was all the rage back in the 80s and 90s as we follow the story of two teenagers who decide to hang out at their local mall after suffering breakups with their respective partners. Much like Clerks, this film is largely filmed in a singular location while sprinkling in some other smaller locations here and there. The main difference here being the inclusion of more characters and a much more prevalent plot. The main issue that I have with this film is that it seems to be the black sheep of the ViewAskewiverse family. I mean, outside of Jason Lee's character Brody making later appearances in films such as Strikes Back or Reboot, the characters in this film are overall underrepresented in the greater ViewAskewiverse. What's a shame was that back in 2016, Kevin was heavily pushing a sequel for the film, even got a lot of the original main cast on board. However, fate told Kevin and the rest of his fans to go f*** themselves, and we were given Reboot instead. Not a bad compromise in hindsight, but I think Mallrats would have been a very interesting sequel. I would love to have seen how T.S. and Brandy's relationship has changed since marriage, and it would have been great seeing the kids of the original cast get into Mallrat shenanigans just like their parents did 20 years prior. And of course, I can't mention this film without mentioning the Stan Lee cameo here. I'm so happy that my two favorite universes, Kev's ViewAskewiverse and Marvel's MCU, are tied together by this one movie and this man. Might be at the bottom of the list, but it's 100% worth at least one watch.
Snoochie boochie noochies.
Next up on number 7, we have Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Most people would have this much higher on their list, and for very good reason. However, as far as this most recent watch through of the series goes, I didn't get the same entertainment value from this film as I had in past years. This might be a controversial opinion, but I really don't think that Jay and Silent Bob are all that interesting as main characters. Yeah, they're entertaining, but when you have a series that includes the Clerks films and Chasing Amy, making the two characters who traditionally have stood off on the sidelines protagonists just seems like a slight misstep. I say slight because, despite my feelings on putting Jay and Bob in the spotlight, they're still very fun to watch and get into all sorts of mischief. This was the film that took the slight nuances that tied these films together and cranked them up to 11. Not only does it draw reference from Kevin's own work, but from others as well, such as that trippy Scooby-Doo sequence early in the film.
Right, Ray, right with a bot.
It's a cult classic and a fan favorite for sure, but unfortunately it landed itself right here at number 7 on this list. What can I say? Not my fucking problem.
Oh, but I think it is.
Number 6 is Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I can't even begin to tell you how disappointed I was when this film got announced. After a year and a half of Kevin hyping up his Mallrats sequel and saying for even longer that a Clerks 3 was in the works, the last thing I wanted was a Jay and Silent Bob sequel. My opinion changed almost immediately, however, once the film actually came out. As a longtime fan of these movies, it was a lot of fun to sit down and see all these characters return in some way, shape, or form. While Jay and Silent Bob take center stage once again, we're also treated to fan favorite characters from films such as Chasing Amy, Mallrats, hell, even Dogma got a shout out. It's quite clear that Kevin wanted to make this flick for the fans in the aftermath of his life-threatening heart attack a couple years prior. It was a blast experiencing this film for the first time with hundreds of Kevin Smith fans and Kevin Smith himself as part of his Reboot Roadshow. This reboot sequel hybrid shows Jay and Silent Bob returning to Hollywood to stop the filming of a Bluntman and Chronic reboot film. On the way, Jay is united with a daughter he never knew that he had. This key plot point forces Jay to show a side of himself that we've never really seen before, and it's a change that takes place over the course of the film. It's one of the few moments we've ever seen the character go through any real development, and it really felt like Kevin was trying to make something that will make you feel something real for the first time since Chasing Amy back in the 90s. That heart that beats at the center of this film is the very thing that puts it above the original for me. It's a solid piece of independent filmmaking as far as I'm concerned.
Let me have your attention for a moment. You're talking about what? You're bitching about what? Are they all here? Who the f*** are you? I'm going anyway. Let's talk about something important.
Number 5, Clerks 2. As an employee of many retail and fast food jobs throughout the years, the Clerks series is probably the most relatable films in the ViewAskewiverse for me personally, if not the most relatable films in the most general sense. Taking place in the fictional fast food restaurant Movies, we see Dante and Randall 10 years after the original film to see that really not a whole lot has changed for them. Looking at just the Clerks films themselves, this movie comes off like quite the dramatic departure from what the original film was. However, when looked at through the lens of the universe as a whole, it's quite clearly the next logical step in Kevin's career. The whole point of Clerks 2 was to go back to basics and take some of the characters he'd been playing around with for years and make not only an emotional but satisfying ending to the ViewAskewiverse. Did he walk it back with Reboot and Clerks 3? Well, that'll be up for debate for as long as there will be people talking about movies on the internet. The aspect that most propels this film for me, aside from the fast food trauma, is the inclusion of Trevor Furman's character Elias. Throwing an overly religious character such as him into the vulgar world that is the mind of Kevin Smith was nothing short of genius, and they only made him better in Clerks 3. Well, for the most part, but don't worry, we're getting there.
Well, what the f*** you waiting for? That's your cue, man.
I got nothing.
Number 4, Clerks. I know I'm going to take flack somewhere for this, but hey, at least it made it to the top 5, right? Obviously, being the one that started it all, the original Clerks holds an important place in the hearts of a lot of movie fans. I'm no different on that front. If you're familiar with my content, then you'll know that the original Clerks is my absolute favorite movie of 1994. I was introduced to it by my dad in my freshman or sophomore year of high school, and while I definitely didn't appreciate it then as I do now, it's hard to deny the impact this film has had in my life. Being the day in the life of two clerks working in a convenience store, this film is one of the greatest examples of a film about the working man, for the working man, and filmed by the working man. I just love the fact that Kevin thought up this film while working in a convenience store and ended up filming it in the real life store that he was working at that time. I've spent an insane amount of time watching documentaries and interviews on the making of this film, and it's just so interesting seeing all the hacks they came up with and what corners were cut to bring this independent masterpiece to life.
You know, there's a million fine-looking women in the world, dude, but they don't all bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you.
Come on, Len.
Yeah.
Next on number 3, we have Clerks 3. People will probably hate me for putting the most recent entry in the ViewAskewiverse up above the original Clerks. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if just as many people hated me for putting it above the second one. However, when you set aside your biases, I feel like it can't go without saying that this is without a doubt the most personal film Kevin has made since the original film that started his whole career. Faced with his own mortality after a near-death experience caused by a heart attack, Randall decides to direct a film in the quick stop in an attempt to leave his mark in the world. The film that follows is essentially a direct retelling of Kevin's time making the original Clerks. Here we see a lot of stories that Kevin has told in interviews for years, finally shown to us in what is essentially a mockumentary of the beginning of his career. I think that aspect, mixed with the inclusion of Randall's heart attack, really goes a long way in indicating where the mind of the filmmaker has been for the past few years. As in the second film, Elias is hands down the best part of this one. However, Blockchain Coltrane is also hands down the worst thing about it. I don't know why the Kevin thought Elias needed a silent sidekick. No, just no. I don't know if we plan on revisiting this universe anytime in the future, but we can definitely leave him out of it. That's all I have to say about that.
That's what I was thinking. That's what an artist thinks. But, it's up to you. However, I'm shooting it in black and white. Or I ain't shooting it at all, motherfucker. That's right.
Number 2, we've got Chasing Amy. Now here's a film with quite a lot to say. Funnily enough, the conversation this movie poses is one that was quite frankly not really happening at this time. This film shows Ben Affleck and Jason Lee as comic book writers rising to the top of the industry with their Bluntman and Chronic characters. When Affleck's character falls in love with a woman played by Joey Lauren Adams, his worldview is shattered when he finds out. This, much like Clerks, is a very solid independent film. It does a wonderful job showing both sides of the argument, with Ben Affleck's character defending his newfound love interest's sexual proclivities, and Lee's character is portrayed as a homophobic and close-minded individual. While I personally would classify it as a romantic comedy, it takes every chance to subvert the genre and flip it on its head. The serious moments mostly outweigh the comedy, and out of the entire 2-hour runtime, you get like 15 whole minutes of Jay and Silent Bob. However, this film also gives us the greatest Silent Bob speech in the whole series. If you can handle the subject matter without seething, I really recommend checking out this film.
So I spent every day since then chasing Amy, so to speak.
Number 1, Dogma. Here we have what has to be the most creative film that Kevin's ever made. Hell, I'd say that this is the most creative film I've seen anyone make. Outside of Chasing Amy or some of his more recent films, I would say that Dogma is probably his most controversial. Much like Red State would do later in his career, this film put a target on his back courtesy of the Catholic Church. Despite the constant death threats thrown at him during this time, Kevin found a way to have fun with the whole situation and mess with his would-be dispatchers. Even went so far as to protest his own film with the people who wanted him dead. This movie probably has the best cast of any film in the ViewAskewiverse, with the main roles being filled out by Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Chris Rock, Salma Hayek, Alan Rickman, Jason Lee, and Linda Fiorentino. This movie also has the perfect amount of Jay and Silent Bob. They're actually put in a situation where they have relevance in the story, but aren't given the spotlight so much that Jay's overbearing personality becomes too grating. It's a small-time film with big-time stakes as our heroes try to stop 2 fallen angels from returning to heaven and destroying all of existence. It'll have you laughing till the very end, and I honestly would love to see a sequel where we focus on another form of religious mythology. However, with the timeline we currently live on, where so many people have lost the ability to take a joke, I don't see that happening. It's really unfortunate because the story and humor is exactly what makes this film work, and it's the exact thing that makes it my number 1 favorite film in Kevin Smith's ViewAskewiverse.
No ticket.
And there you have my ranking for the films in Kevin Smith's ViewAskewiverse. What'd you think? How does your ranking differ from mine? Please be sure to let me know in the comments down below. Though I may disagree with some of his business decisions as of late, I'd be lying if I said Kevin Smith wasn't a huge part of my life. He's my absolute favorite director and the man who inspired my interest in filmmaking. These characters, as well as the world around them, created a prosperous career for a very unique individual. I'm always thrilled to return to the ViewAskewiverse to see what these guys are up to, and I'll gladly do it again and again. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like it or dislike if you disliked it. I have 2 more rankings coming here very, very soon, one of which is a ranking of Kevin's other non-ViewAskewiverse films. I also have a review I've been working on, as well as my first ever documentary. Make sure to subscribe down below and hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss a single thing. Thanks again, cinephiles, and until next time, may the Force be with you.